G'day. Welcome to this live session. What is talent? I thought I'd talk about this because the last couple of weeks I've had a lot of comments made in my normal drawing demo videos about talent, just references to talent. Sometimes if it's not the word talent, it might be the word gift. Look, it's often a word that's used very much as a compliment, and that's very nice if you receive it, and it's very kind of the person giving it. But if we're not particularly thinking of that, if we're thinking of talent as a thing, what is this thing that is talent? When we think about the word, when we say the word to ourselves or to others, what are we thinking of? What is talent? And then stepping back a little bit, yep, no, this is live, Pixel. This is live. So please, love to have your thoughts. G'day, Holman. Is it helpful or is it an unhelpful thing? Is the whole idea of talent something we should think about and talk about if we think it's a thing? Or is it an unhelpful thing to think about and to talk about and to let influence us if we think of it as a thing? Or how are those questions answered if we don't think it's a thing? And what's your experience with the whole concept of talent in your life? Has it been something that's been at the fore or not? And has it been helpful for you? Has it been an encouragement for you or a discouragement for you? How has talent worked with you? And finally, what does all this mean for our drawing, for our going on? What does it mean? G'day there. G'day, Hamel and CJ. CJ, g'day, as we say here down under. So they're the thoughts I want to kind of run through. And I have done one or two videos on this, but it's the sort of topic where I think about it quite a lot for one reason or another. Often because I'll get comments after a video that lead me to think about something more as part of my answer. And I often go beyond, even just a little bit beyond what I last thought about, what I might have last presented in a video. I've probably got I've got at least two, if not three videos that talk about what is talent. But of course, I've got 1,400 videos. So there's every chance that you've not seen any of them and will never come across those ones. So I thought it was a great idea. Yeah, we're getting some thoughts, and that's great. G'day, snot clapping. G'day. I have to laugh at some of the names that appear. Yes. Oh, yes. This haircut. Yes. Yes. This is how I like it to be. But I'm just really stingy when it comes to paying to have my hair cut. I should just get those shavers and do that. But I'm old enough now to get a senior's discount, so that's great. It's $10 off. Okay. So what is talent? Let me say up front, with all the thinking I've done over the last 4 years, as I've thought about this on and off and then started to cement it into words, I actually don't think, at least in any significant way, impacting way really, that talent exists at all. I think it's a word we've used to describe a lot of other dynamics that are quite separate, but we've seen the impact of them lumped together and we've called them talent for that reason. Okay. So 45, that's very, very sweet of you, Pixel. Yes, my first year as a school teacher was in 1980. I'll let you work out things from that. Get a bit of maths. Explain child prodigies. Yeah, that's a good thing, Hamill. That's a good way of expressing it. So firstly, though, I want to just talk through my experience, because I am happy to admit that our personal experience will impact how we think about something and how we understand something. And in a sense, it becomes the first lens that we see the world through, our life. and what's happening immediately around us, which of course at the start is a very small sample of the world. It's basically the people I live with and then the very first interactions with the world I have. So I thought I'd start with my personal experience of the concept of talent, and then we can move on from there, because that may give you grounds to challenge how I think now about it, or perhaps where my thoughts now have come from or not. So in my mind, talent was something that it was a word I often used, often heard in relation to a drawing. So I'd do a drawing as a kid and I'd get told, "Oh wow, that's really good. You're really talented. Oh, you've got artistic talent. That's great. Oh, you're talented." And it generally came from the fact that people thought that what I did was either advanced for my age or it was better than what was being done around. My goodness, I don't know that I can keep tabs with all these comments. Um, Google said I'm 74. Oh dear. I'm not quite that. Come back 6 years. Yeah. I mean, I'm 68. I'm a boomer. Well and truly in the middle of the boomer period. Um, yeah. Um, well, having been distracted by the fact that I'm 74. Anyway, yeah, so that's how I began to hear the word talent, and what what it kind of means for me, what it began to mean for me is that because of the way people used it, which is the way we learn the meaning of words when we're little ones. Um, what it meant was I have this ability that I've been born with to draw better than other people. So it really did line up with the thought of a gift, which is another word that's often used when people are talented. Wow, you've got a gift at piano. You've got such a gift at drawing. You've got such a gift with singing and so forth. Um, yeah. Um, so talent becomes this idea of it's like this bonus that we're just born with, and it gives us a head start over other people. And I think the reason why drawing perhaps attracts the word talent so much is that it's a fairly immediate thing to do. And when we do it, we have something to look at. And particularly when we do it in a group context, such as a classroom, where there might be 10 to 30 or 40, depending where in the world we are and what our school is, drawings of perhaps the same thing all done at once. It's really easy to walk around and think, wow, this one in some way is much better in terms of what it's achieved. And we won't worry about what the word better means, but this one in some way is much better than most of the others, or all of the others, in fact. Or it might be the same at a piano Eisteddfod, which is a piano competition that the English speaking world has, and that as when my and it's to do with when you're learning to play. So there's a competition for each age group. So as my kids were little and learnt the piano, they would go to Eisteddfods that their piano teachers would organise, so they could play in public, and we could all pay some money and clap our children. Um, so that was my experience when I was really little. For different reasons, though, it wasn't a positive thing for me. By the time I got to high school, it was this, which is what, 12, 13. It was this burdensome thing of pressure that because I was talented, I had to produce drawings, artworks in general, because I did art at school, that were better than everybody else's. Because otherwise, I don't know, I was disappointing people or I was proving that I didn't have talent. And so it became this really messy mind game for me that actually took all the pleasure and certainly all the spontaneity out of drawing and doing art in particular. And it made me very focused and paranoid about not making mistakes, because that would mean that my drawing bombed out and I didn't have talent. So by the time I got to the end of my schooling, I almost did nothing at school because of this fear that mine would not be better than anybody else's. In fact, would look terrible. And look, I was in an art class where we had some really, really I was going to say talented people, but we had some people who produced really, really good artworks. And I still remember the people, their names, and some of the artworks they did to this day. And instead of being able to join with a group of really serious and motivated people, um, yeah, the whole idea of talent just really messed me and kind of made me making excuses to not start. And in my day, because I grew up in the dark ages, and the educational systems were different, we didn't have assessments, we had exams. And at the end of the year, you did exams, and that's where your mark came from for your report card. And we actually did what we called the practical exams. We did painting exams as well. And I always did well on those. So I always did well. So, yeah, otherwise my teacher may have fought. And actually, I just remembered, I just dreamed, I had a dream with my art teacher in it last night. Now, how weird. That has never happened since I was in high school in the early 70s. There you go. Her face just in the dream came to mind. But anyway, is it helpful? Is it unhelpful? For me, it was very unhelpful. And so that was a problem for me. But is it a thing? Is it a thing? Because part of the problem I have with the concept is when I often hear it talked about, you can tell from the way people are using it, it's it comes across a bit like this, a bit like, well, you can do that because you're talented. You know, I can't do that because I'm not that talented, or I'm not talented at all. I'm just trying hard, or whatever. And so talent, it becomes this like, how to put it? It becomes this thing that we have no control over, which is ultimately going to be the decider of whether we can do this really well or not. We have no control about it, over it. We can't do anything with it. It'll be there and it will help us, or it's not and it won't. And those who do really well, it's because they've had it. And it's interesting just in the concept of talent and in trying to work out what it means to compare it with other fields where the expression talent is used. Now, it's interesting that from my impression in sport in Australia, and while I've never been a sportsman of any description, it's, you might have heard, it's a very popular thing here in Oz. And but you tend not to hear the word from someone who's winning Olympic medals. Oh, you're so lucky. You're so talented. What you tend to hear is, wow, you must have worked really hard. You must have got up at 3 in the morning and practiced and trained and blah, 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 blah. With music, with singing, you hear the word talent more frequently. And it's usually but it's often specifically said, oh, you're so fortunate to have been born with such a beautiful voice. But there's still the recognition and the assumption that you've worked really hard with it. That, yes, you were born with a better voice than, say, I have. I have the voice of a bullfrog. But you've done something with that talent, with that natural voice you were born with, and you've refined it. And Hamel, I'm getting to child prodigies. I am. It's a really good point. I'm thinking about it now while I talk. When I look a bit disconnected from what I'm saying, it's because I'm thinking about child prodigies in my head. And now there's nothing in my head. Yeah. Quick, someone tell me what I was just saying. Singing and that. But somehow with art and with drawing in particular, talent seems to be a heavier burden that we have. It seemed to be more of a big deal. And maybe it's because if you watch someone do a drawing and they're able to do it well, it almost feels like magic because it's sort of so quick. I just jumped up to grab, as I do when I jump up. I've done a few quick drawings lately. The last probably 3 of the last 5 videos, and so that's a drawing that took me 20 minutes to draw. So that's not very long really, and this one took me 10 minutes to draw, and the demos are in real time drawing. Um, so 10 minutes from go to woe is pretty quick. It kept me under the pump. And so when you watch that drawing appear and you watch someone who knows what they're doing, it can almost appear like magic, particularly if it seems that every line and mark is in the right spot and creates the right effect. Um, it's not always obvious that 30% of them are definitely not in the right spot. But one of the skills that's been learned is just how to manage that so that it's not obvious by the end. Um, so, um, with the child prodigies, Hamill, I mentioned that our children went to piano Eisteddfods competitions for people learning to play the piano, and there was a family of children, and you'd have said they were all prodigies because of what they were playing, and it was like 100 times higher in level, in ability than what any other child there. You could see all the parents when this family arrived at the Eisteddfod, everyone went, "Oh, well, there go all the prizes to that family again." And let me tell you, they did deserve them. They impressed me. But yep, so I am thinking about prodigies. Um, so the idea of talent might be helpful for some personality types if you're told you have it, because it makes you be more confident. It gives you confidence that, hey, what I'm doing, um, what I'm, I have a head start. It's going to come easy to me, and confidence is a hugely important thing in anything. Now, we can be overconfident, and the very word overconfident has a negative connotation. It has the sense of we're more confident than we should be, and that can set us up to trip over our legs and end up on our face. But confidence generally is a good thing, and it's a good thing in drawing. One of the problems I see with a lot of drawings, and I can see it straight away, is a lack of confidence. It's a lot of tight, conservative marks and lines that are drawn with a little clenched fist and a terror of mistakes throughout, and they create a whole drawing that looks like that. Um, so yeah, it can be a very unhelpful thing to not have confidence, but too much confidence has us reach too far too quickly and make presumptions. And like Icarus, we can fly too high to the sun and fall down. So, talent in that sense can be a problem. And particularly if we're, again, how this impacts us depends on the other factors in our personality. But if as a kid, I'm told that everything I do is amazing, it's better than everyone else's, then that may be more true of my childhood drawings than my adult drawings. And it can give me a false impression of where I'm at and what I can do that doesn't actually progress when I get older. Because as I get older, the gap between what I do and what other people do may, and I may even fall behind. And I may even start to come across as arrogant because I'm acting like my drawings are amazing because they always have been, because people said I had talent and that gave me confidence, that gave me overconfidence. But I've reached the stage where I still think they're amazing because that's just what my drawings always are for me, but nobody else does. I may not be saying it yet. So what is it though? What is it? We're 19 minutes in. So let me start talking about what I think it is. I think the best way to describe it, okay, so we're all born and we have certain genetic materials in us. And that genetic material has been blueprinting our body's development. And when we're born, it's still blueprinting the way it develops. So I might be born with large feet. Now, that might be a good thing if I want to be a freestyle swimmer. And if you look at the Australians who've won lots of gold medals for freestyle swimming, they've often had large feet and large hands. Because if you think of the whole motion, having in effect holding paddles in your hands and your feet, because your hands and feet are large enough to be paddles, that's going to give you an advantage. Now, it's an advantage that's within your body. And it doesn't mean just because you've got, I know lots of people with large hands and large feet, and they have never won an Olympic freestyle gold medal. Never, not any medals. But if they wanted to try, it would give them an advantage over someone who, a starting point on day one advantage over someone who had little hands and little feet. So we can be born with things that align with certain activities more. Um, yep, above average lung size, but we can increase the size of our lungs through exercise. We can't really, I don't think we can make our hands bigger. But if we think of singing, if we go back to the singing examples analogy, where again people are often said, "Oh, you're so lucky. You've been born with a beautiful voice." And what we mean by that is you've been born with vocal cords and the ability to use them and the hearing to perceive what you're doing and to control what you're doing that aligns with what we think in our culture sounds beautiful. And so we think, well, you've been born with a gift. Um, we often think about it, actually, I think with music, not so much as a talent, as a gift, particularly with singing, with voice. So, so there's that. Um, what I'd like to say is that if I were to get, and we'll move away from children and come back to adults, if I were to get, say, I don't know, 10, 20 year olds who have never picked up a pen in their life to draw, never. They've had no interest, no opportunity, no encouragement. And I show them all the same drawings. Maybe they watch the same YouTube videos. They get exactly the same materials, exactly the same pens. And I say, okay, what you have to do is this. And I give them exactly the same directions. And I might even have drawn a demo that they all get to see as well of that reference that I want them to draw. They're not going to all be the same. Some of them are going to be better than others. And quite possibly, several are going to actually be quite amazing to think this person's never drawn this before. Now, they would be the people that we'd be inclined to say, you've got talent. There, I've said it. You've got talent. But what's really happening at that point? See, what I would say is that when we go to do anything at all, whether it's washing the dishes or painting the Mona Lisa, when we go to start it, we're drawing on our total life experience that has equipped us to engage with the world. And when I say engage with the world, the fullest sense, thinking, observing, using our body, and then the coordination of all those things to achieve a purpose. Picking up the pen, how comfortable I feel with a pen. Now, maybe some of those people have written, almost impossible to believe these days, but certainly when I was 20, you spent most of your life writing out longhand. And so they were very comfortable with a pen, even though they'd never used it to draw. But there are other people who'd never picked up a pen before for the same reason they'd never done a drawing before. And then there's people who are every stage in between. Just that one life experience alone is going to advantage the person who's very comfortable with the pen. And others, what are we going to say? They're not talented? No, they just lack experience of developing the skill. And now we develop skills consciously often as adults. You might be consciously developing the skill of drawing. I hope you are. And that might be why you're watching this. But a lot of skills we pick up unconsciously. And so I'm always going on about observation in my videos. I think it's one of the very first thing I made videos about. I have 3 videos on observation for drawing that are like 4 years old now, but I haven't really made any since, so I think it's worth going back and looking at them if you haven't seen them. But observation is so important. We can't draw what we can't see. But the bigger danger is we've had a quick look because we know we can't draw what we can't see. The bigger danger is we look and we don't observe the things we need to observe to draw it well, but we think we have. So we draw what we think we've seen. And that's because I have developed observation skills for life. But when I sit down to draw, I think my life observation skills are just fine. Thank you very much. And I know how to see something. Of course, I know how to see something. I've been seeing something for 20 years if I'm one of this group. And then I go to draw it. Um, and of course, I think I've seen it adequately. But the truth is, I haven't. And when I look at the drawings, I can see that they haven't observed it carefully enough. Because how we need to observe something to draw it well, or at least accurately, is a very different observation. It's a very specific observation skill compared to how I need to observe to navigate life. And so, again, you might think if you were to look at my drawing, oh, you're talented. Yours comes out looking much better than someone else's. In fact, I have a skill of observation that I might have developed for drawing if I've been drawing for a long time, or I might have happened to have developed it in a different area, but it overlaps with drawing so that on day one, it looks like I can draw better when in fact it's good fortune. What have I done? I have developed a skill of observation prior to needing it in drawing that other people who haven't done those other skill development activities that I've done haven't developed. So they need to develop it in drawing. And until they develop it adequately, there's going to be a gap between what I can do and what they can do if every other factor is the same. Can you see what I'm saying? I think this is where what we've mistaken for talent comes from. That on day one, some people have developed more experience in the areas that we need. Now, what about child prodigies? Hamel, are you still with us? I hope you're still with us, or if you've had to go, I don't know where you are. It's 10 a.m. here on a Tuesday morning in Sydney. But hopefully you'll come back. And if you're not here, what about child prodigies? What about those children who can't reach the piano but can play it better than Mozart? What about those? What about those people who draw amazing things at sort of 3 and 4 and 5? You could say, well, they haven't had time to develop all those skills, or they haven't been able to develop all those things. Well, what we do with our body is a combination of our brain and our hands. I might have great hand-eye coordination because I play sport, and that makes me very intuitive with hand-eye things. And when I draw, that's hand-eye coordination. And if I do that intuitively because I've learned to trust my hand-eye coordination playing cricket or something, then I bring that as a skill ready-made to my drawing. Who'd have thought sport can help art? There you go. Yeah, so that can be happening, but our brain is as much a mental thing. It's a physical lump inside our skull, and so it is this weird combination of the physical processing activities of an organ, but also our awareness. And well, I'll just use awareness because it's a nice general term. Oh, good evening, New York City and Herr Weiss. Yeah. So and so, our the way our brain was wired to operate, and the things that it's learnt to do, and the way it's learnt to do it, just as little kids walk differently because the way they started walking was different to another kid, maybe even their brother or sister, and that's impacted the way they've walked, and eventually they'll all be walking pretty much the same. But at the start, we're still learning the physical processing. Thinking is the same way. Little kids think in different ways. Some kids think in very narrow ways to other kids, and they grow older and it all expands. But at the start, you can see the differences. And for some children, the way their brains are thinking will help them to do the things that you need to do to draw, that others, their brain has happened to have started its wiring process in different areas. They'll have different strengths, but this may be a weakness for them. So there's all of that. But if you were to ask me, what is the skill that's enabled me as an adult to learn to draw? To learn to draw, I think quite quickly, because I mean, you look at me as an old grandpa, and you think, oh, he's been drawing his whole life. No, actually, I haven't. No, for all the issues I've alluded to earlier, I haven't been drawing my whole life. I did. I drew as a kid, and I largely drew as a kid because it was one of the few access activities that was available to me. I needed to have piece of paper and a pen. And we had some cartoons. I used to just copy Scrooge McDuck and Donald Duck and Superman. I mean, that was my drawing. I didn't really draw original things. I just copied, but I could do it well, and I could do it well, probably better than my peers could. Um, by the time I got to high school, I was almost immobilized because I didn't want anyone to see what I was doing, because that whole pressure I felt from being labeled talented, and that I was just going to disappoint them all. What a sad kid I was. And then I got to the end of high school doing very little because, as I said, in those days, there wasn't assessments. It was a 3-hour painting exam. And I surprised myself by always doing well in those. And I diddled around with art a little bit when I left school, tried to do a few things, but I just found the pressure too overwhelming and didn't. And I did pretty much nothing until I was 50. And then I realized I wasn't going to live forever. And that because I thought about art every day. And then I started painting, oil painting. So I started with oil paints, and I painted in oils for 10 years. Oh dear. I hope that light still works. So there's one of them. Yeah. So, oh yeah, it was just a light, darling. Okay, I just knocked it off the table. My wife making sure that's not me on the floor, I think. What a dear woman. Yeah, and I painted, and I began to have exhibitions, and I sold lots of paintings. Sold a couple of hundred paintings, and yeah, and that was great. And then I in 2018 went to Europe for a wedding with the family, and I began to do street sketching. And I'd done a couple of those, but just a handful in in on a previous trip. Um, but I loved it. I loved the experience. I drew Notre Dame with my daughter, drawing Notre Dame beside me as the sun went down behind it. And it was such a great experience. And then my daughter posted that drawing on my Instagram account, and it got a very nice reception. That encouraged me, but more the experience was so great. It encouraged me, and I kept drawing that trip. I filled a sketchbook. When I got home, I wanted to keep drawing because I enjoyed it, and I like posting them on Instagram too. That they did better than my paintings did, and so I kept doing it. And then a couple of years later, I decided to do a YouTube channel, and so I began to draw freehand in ink. That wasn't the way I was doing my Instagram drawings, so I began to do freehand in ink. So I've only been doing freehand in ink drawing for 4.5 years, I think. Yeah, 4.5 years. So I haven't been doing it for 50 years. And I think I've improved fairly rapidly. And the question is why? And it's partly my answer to this why that's helped inform my understanding of what is this thing of talent. Because I don't think I was born with some almost magical ability to draw. The advantage I think I have, and I use the word advantage advisedly, deliberately. The advantage I think I've had is that I've learnt to learn well. I've learned for various reasons, analytical skills that I've also applied quite consciously to how do I learn things so I can learn them better and faster. And I'm able to apply that to anything. So I've applied it to drawing. And the thing I found quite remarkable for my own drawing improvement and my own development of drawing, um, I don't know whether sometimes I hold up a. Uh, okay, this is one of my early drawings, and that I made a demo of. So this is back at the start of the 4 years, and lots of solid, heavy lines, outliney lines, defining things, and bare spaces, and I capture something, and there's a certain degree of accuracy. But I feel personally that this 10-minute sketch, literally 10 minutes of drawing, and this 20 minutes of drawing are far more interesting for a little bit of a looser style and far more evocative of a feeling of a location than that drawing that took me 40 minutes to do. So, why is where I started change? It's changed because I keep looking at what I'm doing and I keep imagining what I'd like to be able to do. And that changes because my awareness of what's possible keeps changing. And then I'm thinking, how can I do that? I'm also analyzing everything I do. And I need to analyze everything I do because I have to speak it out. I have to use it as a voiceover in the demo, in the videos. And so making the videos has forced me to put into words things that would have remained vague thoughts. And when I've put them into words, I'm the first person who gets to hear them. I'm the first person who gets to think about them. I'm the first person who gets to build it into, if I want to, my overall framework, the package that I go to unwrap when I want to draw, the way of thinking. So that's the way, and I've seen the benefit of that. And when I finish a drawing, I do what I say. I really do what I say. The process that I talk about, it's not like, oh, this will, fill up a video. It's how I draw. I do look at it and I think, what's worked well, what's not worked well, what's just a random thing here, what's something that I can use to improve my overall system, my overall process, my overall strategy, my overall mark making. Should I have switched pens halfway through, or does this look fine? So that's a really important part of my process. So I'm continually building on what I've done in a very analytical way. Now, those aren't drawing skills. Those are skills that I've learnt one way or another that I apply to drawing. Learning to learn is so important. And that's why it is such, I think, a destructive thing, the way that genre that has so much momentum on YouTube in drawing is so destructive. The impression we get from the way videos are presented and certainly titled, and I'm guilty of this too, because it seems to be the only way to do business. But I hope the videos are not always what the thumbnail's saying, or rather are better than what the thumbnail's saying. And that's that. Learning to draw is learning the tricks and tips and hacks and shortcuts and get to the end before you start's kind of the secrets. And there's this idea that the artists, the masters, the ones who are where I want to be, they know the secret tricks and tips that they hold secret, that they don't tell anyone. that enable them to draw the way they do. Now, they might well have things about the way they draw that they don't put in free YouTube videos because they have drawing courses that they want you to take. Let me tell you, anything I think of, I blather in the next video. So you know everything I know about my drawing and about the understanding of the drawing process. I'm not patient enough to keep secrets for later. Oh, look what I discovered. Um, but but it's not some magic thing. It's simply a skill, a way of thinking and understanding that they've developed that they may not have told you. But equally, I'm not trained. My drawing method process is simply how I started drawing. And as I thought about how can I improve this, it's what I did. And by how can I improve this, I mean, how can I do the drawings on the paper that I imagine in my head? And sometimes what I imagine in my head is what I've seen other people draw, or it's influenced by what I see, how I see other people have drawn. But that's what I'm doing. It's incorporating that into what I am doing and what I can now see is a possibility to do. So it is this always ongoing developing swirl of understanding a drawing process, my translation process, and then applying that to things. And that uses a lot of skills that I've learned in a lot of other areas. But I've certainly honed those skills now in drawing. And if I were to do another graphically based skill, I don't know, weaving, pottery, or whatever, I actually think I would start further along than someone who'd never drawn in the way I had. In fact, when I started drawing, remember my experience previous with art was 10 years of painting in oils full time. A lot of those years full time in oils. And I was surprised at how I could detect the benefit to my drawing, that painting in oils. And I was drawing buildings, I was drawing scenes of Paris. I'd been painting Australian gums and whatnot, and waratahs and flowers. And yet I could feel the direct application of things I learned in the oil painting into my drawing because a lot of the skill and the thinking and the observation overlapped. And I was conscious it was giving me a head start. Um, so what about the child prodigies then? Well, our brains are physical organs, and we're not all born with the same physical organ. I'm told that I mean, I don't know whether this is true or not, but I certainly read it when I was a kid, that the more wrinkles, crinkles that are on the surface of your brain, the more surface area you have, and that gives your brain more capacity for the ways we measure intelligence to happen. And so smarter people usually have more wrinkles and crinkles in all that sort of pattern, that texture on the surface of the brain. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's the sort of thing I'm talking about, that some brains simply may be developed in a way that they can do whatever brains are meant to do differently in a better way. Just as hands, feet, ears, limbs can develop with variations that give advantage to some people for some skills. So there's that to begin with. There's also, of course, environment. And if you have a very supportive environment when you start to learn a skill, whether it's drawing or piano or whatever, then that's going to be a head start on people who don't. And well, you know, now did I have that? No, no, I didn't have that. I didn't have any encouragement to draw. I just went and did that by myself, and I kept it to myself, as it turns out, in the end. But I was able to be self-motivated because of who I was responding to the environment that I was in. It probably pushed my self-motivation further, whereas for someone else with a different package of everything might have actually discouraged them. They might have needed that encouragement. Whereas no, I learned to just push on myself, and that was a good skill that I could take to other areas as well. Um, but equally, I wasn't fussed with sport. So often I was as a little boy, I was drawing when other kids were kicking a ball. Well, they got better at kicking a ball, and I got better at drawing. So there are all of these things. Now, if you had parents who really then tried to encourage what they saw as a strength, they might have, I don't know, provided classes. Not that think our kids ever wanted the piano classes, but they might provide classes in that skill or opportunity, or simply buy equipment, or take you to see how this looks at an adult professional level to kind of encourage you and give you some direction, and all of that. And all of those things, I mean, we like to do things we do well at. We like to do things that gives us feelings of success and whatnot. And so as a kid, if I'm doing something and I feel like I'm doing it well, that's encouragement to keep going, even quite intensely. And so I often drew, often behind closed doors as a kid, because I could do it easily, and I could see that my drawings looked quite realistic. I could see that my Scrooge McDuck looked like Scrooge McDuck, even though those duck bills weren't particularly easy to draw, and and so forth. And so, yeah, and so I kept drawing, and it was something because I felt good when I did. I felt good at the end. I did it a whole lot more than other people did. And so when I was at school being told, "Oh, you're talented," well, maybe it's just that I'd spent 30 hours in the last week drawing at home, and the rest of the class had spent 0. They'd been out in the sun kicking a ball. Um, it's the bottom line is, every time we all sit down to do the same thing, none of us are at the same starting point. Now, obviously, when we're different ages, and obviously, but I'm talking about when we're all 5-year-olds at school, or even if we're 3-year-olds being given a pen by mum or dad for the first time to make scribbles on a piece of paper. None of us are starting at the same point. You can't compare what we're doing, you know. And there is some physicality, if I'm having a running race and I've never run before, and the person next to me has much longer legs than me, and the gun goes and we run, well, obviously they've got an advantage. If I can't move my legs faster, if all other things are equal, that person has an advantage over me, simply because their legs are longer. Now, maybe I can overcome that by learning to move my legs faster, or that might work for a while, but at some point the guy next to me may realize his advantage and push his advantage. But yeah, the physicality of our body can help. If I've got really good eyesight, that may help me draw detail more accurately, more effectively. If I've developed the skills of analysis and reviewing and reflecting, that may let me look at my drawings and see the things that aren't right. And if other parts of my personality development are happy enough, that may not discourage me, which it might do for someone else. It may encourage me to really pinpoint how I need to change what I've just done, and and give me a heads up on my next drawing, which is what I do when I draw. You know, um, I appreciate it every time I get a kind comment. "Oh, you're so talented. You've got such a gift," because I know it comes from a nice place. I know someone saying they've appreciated and enjoy and respect what I've done, and that's great. And I receive that thankfully, and I'm not in any way ungrateful for that kindness. However, I do think, I could also think, if I wanted to, yeah, you haven't seen the pile of hundreds of drawings like this, stacked up, in all around me. I slip on them on the floor everywhere, everywhere. Drawings, 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 drawings that I've done as I've made videos. Every one of them a focal point of effort, energy, analysis. As I said, because I have to do the voiceover, I have to find words to describe what I was doing. And I often, if I don't think I've done it well, I'll always put that in the demo as well in the voiceover, because we learn as much from seeing what not to do as what to do, or ideas of how we might. Oh goodness, look at this old t-shirt I've worn. I should have put a shirt on. Yeah, we learn as much by seeing when things don't work as when they do work. Sometimes we learn things more emphatically, and that can be a helpful thing. Um, I mentioned that family who at the piano estates that my kids went to when they were learning piano when they were little. Um, yeah, there was this family that turned up, and were all so far ahead of everybody else. But you knew that the moment they got home from school, they were playing the piano, and they were playing the piano 3 hours until dinner. And then they had dinner, and then they played the piano for an hour and a half after dinner, and they were up early, and they did at least an hour's piano before they left for school. And they didn't do sport on the weekend. So there was a lot of parental, let's just say, encouragement and provision of opportunity and resources for them to develop this skill. Were they talented? They were certainly capable. I think they had other skills that they probably would have done well in any area they applied themselves in. But I don't think we have to invent the concept of talent to explain how good they were and why they were so much better than everybody else. And I think there were three of them in the family, two boys and a girl from memory, and they were each different too. You could, one of them always was the best of the three in their category. And sometimes they were being pushed in far, as far as the adjudicators, the judges, thought too far. Because with an Eisteddfod, it's not how hard the piece you play is, it's how perfectly you play it. So playing an extremely complicated piece, but making mistakes, you weren't going to win over someone who played a very simple piece, let's say an age-appropriate piece for a 5-year-old, and was flawless, made no mistakes. They would beat, Beethoven, whatever, with lots of mistakes. So, but are they prodigies? It was easy to think so when you looked at the results of what they did, but the inputs weren't the same. And I can't, I can't make judgments on myself about my capability or otherwise based on the difference of what we produce if we haven't had the same inputs. But what I can do is I can start to control, to manipulate, to make choices about my inputs. The thing I keep saying over and over again is, if you're not happy with your drawings and you've been drawing for a bit, is you need to change the way you draw. You need to shake something up to make your drawing experience process different, because you've obviously fallen into a routine of drawing the same way all the time, which is great if it produces the result we want. But if it doesn't, then we have to change something. And the thing I say most frequently is, draw it in half the time. Put the clock on. Give yourself a time pressure that you don't have when you just sit down to draw. I think a time pressure is fantastic for keeping a little bit of animation in our mark making, because, well, we have to keep moving. We can't get bogged down. Now, if I want to do photorealism, then that's different again. But I'm not. Although I try to capture a feeling of realism, I'm never trying to be photorealistic. I just enjoy those things when people do them. I know a few people who do them, and amazing, especially some glorious pastel photorealism of close-up shells and sand and amazing stuff. But if that's not what we're trying to do, then a little time pressure that we force ourselves to stick to, I finish my drawing when the timer goes off, can be a great thing just to shake up the patterns of drawing that. It's not that I can't draw better, it's not that I'm not talented, it's just that my learning development is not following a good pattern, a good framework, and this is where I mean, this is where a teacher, if we had a teacher, would would improve it, because a teacher would be hopefully able to see things that could be changed in some way to stimulate a better outcome, more the outcome that I'm looking for. And one of the advantages I have is that I am a trained teacher. And when you are a trained teacher, well, back in the day, in Australia anyway, spent time learning how we learn, or at least how we understood learning back in the 70s. We look at how do we learn, because then as a teacher, I use that to uh, uh, inform my presentation. I try and present the lesson in a way that works in with how people learn, how the kids are going to learn. So, but for me now, that means anything I do, I've got a good appreciation of at least a learning process that I can use, because learning to learn is a skill in itself. And when I learn a skill, I've already learned how to learn, or at least in a reasonably adequate way. And I can apply that to the actual skill I'm learning to draw. Look, for the first time, I mean, I've done dozens and dozens and dozens, maybe even 100 of these lives, I don't know. And I've never not read all the comments as they've come in, but they've just been, whoa, it's been just like watching it move up and down sometimes. So, uh, thanks, Yessie Bien, for having joined us. Um, let's just have a look, though. I hear from many musicians, for example, how they struggle with something for years that was simply fixed by a teacher in a few hours. Self-learning can hinder. Absolutely. Yep, a lot, because there is no feedback. Yeah, well, that's what I was just saying, I guess. Yes, that having a teacher means we can give some input. But listen, if you're not if you don't like where your drawings have got to, and you don't have a teacher, and you're not going to be able to get a teacher, then don't underestimate the ability, the helpfulness of a good friend who isn't afraid of offending you, and just taking your drawings to them and saying, look, tell them, don't ask them what they think of it, because then they'll be nice. Say, look, I'm really unhappy with my drawings. I feel they've reached this stage where they're not progressing, and I just can't work out why or what needs to change. And I don't have anyone to ask what to do, but can you help me see what's not right? What doesn't work? Why does this look boring or inaccurate or whatever? What would make it look more interesting or more realistic? What are the five things that stand out as making this drawing not work? You see, because other people, they may not know what you have to do, they may not know how to fix it, but they can certainly see what's wrong with it. And that gives you direction. And particularly if you have a few people you can ask, that gives you direction then where to go. And they might consistently say that your hatching looks careless and clumsy, or it doesn't seem to fit with what it's on. And now you can go and study resources on hatching more. If they say that the building outlines are wonky and don't look right, then you know that perspective is something you need to look at more. If they say that it looks cartoon-like, then you need to consider what are the characteristics of cartoons versus drawings that aren't cartoons, because I need to have less of one and more of the other. So all of those things. So don't underestimate what an honest, even if uneducated in the field, good friend can do for you in that. What does all this mean for us when we draw? Oh, I've got 40 seconds. What does all this mean for us when we draw? Look, I think talent generally is, for most people, unhelpful. because I think it sets them up to be thinking, I don't really have what I need. And when I see a good drawing, I'm inclined to think, oh, they're just talented. I wish I was born with that talent, rather than, wow, I need to learn what they've learned. There is a way to do this and they've learnt it, as opposed to they were born with a pen in their hand doing it from the word go. And I know that because I know that when people make comments about, oh, you're so talented, oh, you've got such a gift, it's lovely, it's wonderful. And I want to push back and say, you haven't seen the hundreds of drawings. You haven't seen the frustration. You haven't seen the ones I've torn up. You haven't seen the occasional drawing that I've started 6 times because I just can't get the effect that I want in the way I want until I do it 6 times, which helps me learn how to create the effect that I want. But I stuck at it and kept sticking at it. But also I I I didn't try to do everything at the start. I've got a few drawings I've done in this last 12 months that I wanted to draw the 12 months or even earlier before, and I didn't because I didn't feel like I had the skill level to do it well, and I didn't want to discourage myself. However much talent you think I've got, however gifted you think I am, I had drawings that when you looked at them, you'd have thought, wow, I don't know if I have any of them at hand to show you. I don't think I do. I'm just flicking through a book where I've got a lot of them, but no, the one I particularly wanted to show you, I don't. Maybe it's just here, actually. Gosh, I don't know where this one. No, can't think of it. But I'll show you this one instead, just because it's one of my favourites. I do lots of trees. This is a gum tree, but this is a tree I had for a long time. This reference, it's a zoomed in over the top of a cruise ship. It's from one side of Circular Quay to the other. It's in the Botanic Gardens in Sydney, and the Opera House is just in front of it. They've cut into the ridge line, and it drops down, and it's leveled to the harbour, to the water, and the Opera House is there. And I just love the view. I love the tree. I loved everything about it. And I didn't draw it for years and years because I didn't think I was ready to. And when I did, I was ready to. And this is my favorite tree drawing, and it's one of the favorite drawings of mine that I've done. But I had the desire to paint it, to draw it before I had the skill. And so you could say all you like about talent then. I couldn't have done it what I'd done now because I hadn't developed the experience of putting into practice the things that I knew or that I was thinking at that point. And I've got a drawing of a house, a Victorian terrace house in Hobart, which is the same. I wanted to draw it the second I saw it. It took 18 months before I got the skill level, I thought, and the confidence to have a chance to draw it well. Because I don't need to draw things badly because I rush at things that I'm not ready for, because that's just discouraging. I like to encourage myself as much as I like to encourage others. And then there's another scene of a park in Paris, which was also something I really wanted to draw. It had a lot of light effects, a lot of detail, fountain, people on the grass, lovely trees, architecture, had everything in it. And it just intimidated me. So it wasn't magic that I could draw it. I put off drawing it till the right time, and I kept looking at it and worked on the skills that I need to draw it well. And then I planned it well before I started. I talk about all the time, over and over again, before I draw something, I spend 5 minutes just seeing if what I'm thinking is going to work. This was the 5 minutes I spent for this. See, it's this part here. I don't normally draw so much, But because I was drawing it so quickly, in a couple of minutes, I got a whole lot of it drawn. I thought, "Oh, I should have positioned it on the paper better. I could have just kept going." Um, because I explore marks for a couple of minutes to see if the marks are going to create the effect I wanted. Here, I was actually exploring the speed I was drawing at to see whether I had a chance of getting the drawing done in the time I was setting myself up to drawing. Okay. I'm so I actually don't think talent is a thing. I think it's a word that we've used to describe a whole lot of things that we've lumped together that appear to give someone an advantage in drawing. It's actually just simply the development of a whole lot of other skills and ways of thinking that are helpful. And while some people's brains physically are set up that they'll probably process things faster than others, and some people have better eyesight, except for things like that, hand-eye coordination is practice. Being able to move your arm, smoothly and straight for most people is just practice. Um, um, except when obviously it's not. But most of the time, these things pretty much are a baseline, except for a few things. Now, and in sport, like look at the pole vaulters. How many of them are short? None of them, not at Olympic level. Because if you want to be the very best, you need to have that physical advantage. But if you want to come back from gold level place with drawing, I think it's mostly to do with understanding the process. It's because what we do flows from our understanding. What we even think of to do flows from our understanding of what we think is possible. So all of this, and the good news is it's not a gift that you were born with or not born with. And talent's wonderful perhaps for the people who are told they have it, although for me it was really a nightmare. But as I've said earlier, if you've missed it, but for most people, it becomes a place of discouragement and of bailing out, I think often prematurely, because if they've started learning to draw, you want to learn to draw. But maybe one of the skills you haven't learnt to deal with is disappointment when things don't go as easily as you'd like them to go, because that's a skill too. Pushing on is a skill, not getting discouraged, not taking it personally, not thinking that a bad drawing means you're a hopeless, terrible person. Simply that there's something I need to learn in the next lesson. So we come at everything with different pre-programming. It's like the what do they call at uni? The subjects you have to do before you can do what's it called? What's the word? Someone tell me the word. You're in third year uni and you want to do this subject, but you have to have done what's the word? I am an old man. What's the word? Nah, young at heart. What's the word? Pre something, probably. Anyway, you can't do this course if you haven't done this course earlier. And so it's a bit like that. Some people have done the earlier courses without realizing it when they've done other things. But when they sit next to someone who hasn't done that earlier course in their life, but they're both sitting down to learn to draw together, it makes one person seem more talented because it just they seem to be able to do it without having learnt it. And I think that's maybe a good definition of talent. Someone has the ability to achieve in a skill without having actually learnt it in any formal sense. So yeah. Here we have a definition: the inborn ability to make progress without this children are likely to be frustrated, give up, and strong intrinsic motivation, which we call a rage to master. This is for prodigies, yes. Every child is born with an inborn ability to make progress, or else they wouldn't make progress. Um, but yes, an ability to focus and to really concentrate on something, that can be a disposition as well. But they've still put the time into to focusing, and the intense. And look, I was like that. And I still am. I can get absorbed in a task and the hours go. Why does that happen? I don't know. Maybe because as a kid there weren't many options. So when I was doing something, I just kept doing it. And I felt benefit from that. And so, I prerequisite. Thank you, Pixel. Thank you. I can sleep tonight. Prerequisite. Yes, and Diane, thank you as well. Oh gosh, that was the word that we certainly knew when we were at uni. What's the prerequisite? Look up the prep. I done the prerequisite. Yeah, thank you. Gosh, you've been here all this time. Oh gosh, thank you. Yeah. So, any questions about drawing before we go? It hasn't got to be about talent. If you just want to ask me a question, if you're stuck at a point, you want to ask me something about it, then thanks, Pixel. Yeah. I think in the end, for most people end up feeling that they don't have the talent that other people have, and it can be an easy out when they don't really want an easy out. They really want encouragement to persevere. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. And I've probably made 5 videos that touch on this or are all about this. But it's been nice just to blather on and not have to worry about the time or editing, or if I think of a tangent, I can go off in that direction easily and quickly. You've been drawing while listening. Oh, maybe I should have tried that. I could have had a nice drawing now, although I may not have had many people listening. Comparison is the thief of joy. Do you know, that was the very first meme I saw that I saved back when I first discovered Instagram. It was the first thing I read in Instagram that really made sense and really made me ponder, and I wrote it down. And yeah, I actually have used that in quite a few of my videos. Please hit the like button for this if you haven't already. If you don't know, I've been posting a short a day, and they have little kind of they're my Instagram drawings, so they're not drawn freehand, but they're the big impressive looking drawings that took me 5 or 6 hours to do. That I was doing when I came back from Europe in 2018, and they're not that. Some of them are my photos, but most of them aren't. But I've used them with permission from the photographers. But yeah, have a look at some of those, and they're only 15 seconds, and I just give some thoughts about the drawing process that usually relates to those subjects. Yes. So, well, maybe I'm just hoping that well, the reason why the text is so fast is because I want to have a bit of time at the end where you could just see the drawing too. And you know me, I like to say things in lots of words, but you can always watch it twice and be ready for the words that you missed last time. But I've just been doing maybe one of those a day, because they don't take very long to put together, because I've got the time lapses already. So have a look at those for me. And if you've never checked out my playlist, have a look at the playlist, because I've got so many videos now. I can't find one I want necessarily. But the playlists are a way of seeing groupings of videos that in some way go together. It may be they're all simple, easy topics. They may, to draw subjects rather than topics. They might be all real-time drawing. They might be all to do with hatching in some way. They might be all to do with the effect of detail, or might all to be with trees and foliage and things. And so if you have a weak area and you want to see things, find videos that really concentrate in that area, yeah, yeah. I mean, I might not make a new one for weeks on that, but it's a way of finding the material I have that is most helpful. Any other thoughts or questions? The people who've just joined us, I hope you we're just wrapping this up. If you've got just a quick question you want to ask me about the drawing process, but thank you so much for all those people who've lingered for quite a long time in this. But the short answer is, for those just joining, I don't think there's such a thing as talent in the way we understand it. I think what we think of as talent comes from other places combined with a lot of hard intentional work. And when we, yeah, if we talk about talent to other people, we're usually being complimentary, and that's a nice thing. But when we think about talent in regard to ourselves, we're often putting ourselves down and making ourselves feel like we don't have talent and we lack talent, and if only we had talent. And that's discouraging, because I can't do anything about not having talent. But if I realize that there's no such thing as talent, it's about skill and learning and application. And look, do I say this or not? If I can be an old man, and I'm not being a grumpy old man, but it might sound this way. But when you look back over decades more than what most people have, and you see the changes of what people do in the expectations that we have for what we can do and how we can do it, there's been this huge drop in people working hard at things, and this expectation that we can just have success. Everyone has success. Everyone can see success on social media so much now. I'm not against social media. Obviously not. Social media can be great. Yeah. But we can see success very quickly and easily, and we want the success rather than the thing. We want the success, but we haven't seen what that person's gone through to get it. Some successful people in social media have just been lucky on what they've hit on a good idea that's not really taken any effort or work or experience or training, but it was a great idea and they had it, and good luck to them, I say. But most of the time when we see success on social media is the result of a lot of application and work that we don't see and we don't get, and it's easy just to want that success. So, and we don't have experience in the working hard in the application to even realize that we need to have it, let alone choose to do it, because we spend all our time looking rather than doing it. That's the big problem with social media. We spend all our time looking at other people doing things or other people who've done things, and we dream of doing it ourselves, but all our time is spent looking. Stop watching videos about drawing and just draw. It's easy to somehow feel that if I've watched the video, I've somehow improved. No, if I haven't picked up a pencil, a pen, paintbrush, whatever, and tried to apply it to my process, then it's been of no value whatsoever. Pixel, I've been learning art for 5 years from now. From being a hard worker, has got me some success on social, 60K on Twitter, 50 on Instagram, so I'm going to keep going. That's excellent. Well done. Yeah. And look, Instagram for me was encouraging too. I once I stopped posting my paintings and began to post my drawings, there's a whole world out there of urban sketches that I never knew existed. So, all right, look, gosh, it's 11 o'clock. Yeah, maybe I want a second cup of coffee today. It's going to be 35 degrees here, so a very hot day. So it'll be a day to stay inside. So I might even do a drawing soon, but I think I need to stretch my legs and then maybe do some drawing. Maybe you could do some drawing too and not worry about talent, but just do your best and keep doing your best. And don't just draw though. Think about the process, whether it's giving you the results that you want. And if not, how can you shake up your process? And if you don't have a teacher, at least you can ask your friends, what's not working in my drawing? And if they're honest, they can be a really good friend and give you some direction of ways that you can be your teacher and you can find the information. Remember, if I'm learning to draw and I'm not in a class, or I don't have a course that's been set out as a course where I know the curriculum, then I am my teacher as well. I am my teacher as well. So I need to do all the things a teacher does. I need to choose my lesson material carefully to make sure it's relevant to the subject. The subject is what I want to learn to do. And then I need to mark the work and see whether the student's able to go on, needs to stay at that level, or maybe needs to go back. Or maybe the student needs a shake up and a stern warning about their attitude. Well, I need to give that to myself too. I need to do all the things a teacher did. Now, remember at school, some teachers were better teachers than others. Some teachers were more fun. Some teachers were better teachers and we learnt more. And some teachers were not fun and were lousy teachers too. I want to be the best teacher for myself that I can be. I want to be the teacher who maybe wasn't the most fun, but drew the best out of us in terms of results. That's the teacher I want to be for me. So think about what it means to be a good teacher as well as being a good student if you don't have a teacher. Hi, Stephen. From my perspective, is it better to draw trees by observing them directly outdoors or using a reference photo? What are the main differences? Look, the main differences generally between trees, between outdoors and photos. When it comes to trees particularly suffer from being a photo. They compress and they end up looking like a shape of green leaves that we could almost cut out into a shape. Trees are three-dimensional, and in life we look through them. And so some leaves are, and even with what we don't look through, some branches come towards us, other branches go out parallel to us or horizontally to us, and some go upwards, and the upwards ones are actually further away from us from the ones that come towards us. So all these things that we see in three dimensions, when we have two eyes looking, but the camera has one lens, one eye, and so everything is flattened. So when we look at the photo, it's actually hard. We've got to really work hard to recognize the three-dimensionality. In fact, if there's more foliage through the tree, that can look like it's still part of our tree. And in Australia, with gum trees, which have very gappy, like in lots of countries, all the tree canopy is very dense. But in Australia, so many of our trees are fairly sparse. And so we can see through parts of trees to trees behind. Well, we have to separate all that out, because when I draw a picture of a tree, I want it to feel real. I don't want it to feel like a photo of a tree. And so I've got to put back into the photo, or I've got to be able to see, visualize in the photo what the photo's not showing me, which is the three dimensions. And so, yeah, that's really helpful. Generally, drawing from a photo is easier than drawing from life because the photo is two-dimensional and our drawing is two-dimensional. And the photo has already translated life, the three-dimensional life with great depth of plane, into two dimensions for us. And so the viewpoint never changes. Every time I look up when I'm drawing from life, and I look up, if my eyes are in a slightly different spot, I'm seeing things differently. And depending on how close I am to the various things and the size and all of these things, the relative position of things can change as well. And let alone if I, drop my pen and it rolls away and I have to get up and pick it up. And when I sit down, the chair moves slightly and I've actually shifted my position, not just my eyeballs. So we have to allow for that. If you want to learn to draw on location and you have trouble with the shifting viewpoint, can I suggest you take a photo with what you want to start with? It sometimes can help you just realign I don't mean draw from the photo, but if you shift position too much for some reason, or you've got to get up and go to the loo and come back or something, it lets you relocate as close as possible to the original starting viewpoint. And it can help with scale things a little bit as well. So, I don't do it to be a crutch, but it can be a useful transition when we start drawing from life. The great thing about life is that we see things that we don't always see. But perspective is difficult, particularly if we're in a space with architecture around us. And so perspective angles that go past us in life. The temptation is when I start to draw the wall coming past me here, I turn my head to see it. And now I've totally changed everything in terms of how it connects with what I've drawn. To draw that, I've got to do one of those lovely deliberately distorted drawings. But that's another headspace to be in. And I may not be in it. I may be somehow trying to capture it all as like a photo capture. Well, I can't if I'm turning my head to see things. I've got to look straight ahead rigidly and just get a sense peripherally where the angles are and what's happening and what's level with me, and work out where to stop as well. How much do I think about camera lenses, cone of vision and all that? Sometimes a lot and sometimes not at all. Depending what I'm drawing. But if I'm drawing on location, I certainly think about field of vision a lot. If I'm drawing from a photo, well, it's all here. I can see it all easily. In a sense, the problem with the camera, with the photo, is that all of this can be a focal point. Like all at once, I can basically see the whole thing. Whereas in life, this much space might only be sort of 10 leaves bunched together in front of me. So seeing too much detail all at once is the problem of photos, drawing from photos. I wouldn't. Rather than saying that cameras have their own perspective, I think lenses have a certain distortion as well, and so they pull things in from the sides, and they exaggerate the third point of 3-point perspective. They bring it in and make it look like a big deal when in life we often don't see it at all. And it can be quite dramatic, and it accentuates the feeling of height, and that can be great, particularly in certain subjects. But we need to consciously decide whether we're going to draw it into our photo when you don't see it in life. So generally I don't, or I don't do it as much. If we wouldn't have that 3-point perspective, but effect in life, I tend not to draw it in from my photos. And if you want to know, well, how do you know how wide things really are? Eye level. Where they are at eye level will give you the widths to have things that come together more as they go further up. Because eye level is where we don't have that distortion. Okay, well, look, thanks everyone for joining. I think it's time for me to go for a walk before it gets really hot, and pump a bit of blood through this brain, and then maybe think about doing a drawing in the heat of the day. So whether you're going off to work, settling down for a quiet night in front of the fire or the telly, going to draw yourself or whatever, thanks for joining, and hit that like button if you haven't. If you missed the start, maybe when you're doing the dishes or washing the clothes or doing some ironing, you can go back and get the start. I think it was a good framework for the discussion. But in the end, I'll see you next video. Bye.